We all want to make a positive impact on the world, but what do we have to experience to get there? This is Stripped Bare FM, where our shared stories of strategy, raw talk, and real people uplift and inspire you. Now, welcome the host of Stripped Bare FM, Catherine Contos.
Imagine participating in the Boston Marathon and suddenly, bombs go off. What happens next? Today on Stripped Bare FM, I have the pleasure of talking to Jennifer Kauffman, a transformational speaker and teacher and award-winning coach. She is the best-selling author of the book Shattered, the co-producer of the first-ever sold-out one-man live show on Broadway called Dream Big, featuring motivational speaker Danielle Rudy Rudiger. She is the executive producer of the Emmy and Telly Award-winning documentary called A New Leash on Life, the Canines for Warriors story. Let's take a moment right here to inform my listeners that they can benefit from learning different strategies on scaling both their life and their career by booking a quick consultation with me directly via my site, catherinecontos.com. Now back to our guest. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you for having me, Catherine.
Are you ready for some raw talk?
I am.
Great. Jennifer, you witnessed and experienced the Boston Marathon terrorist attack. Please let us know a little bit about who Jennifer was prior to this life-changing moment.
Sure. Prior to the bombings, so I've owned and operated my own business for 13 going on 14 years now. So I was well into my business at the time the bombings happened back in 2013. I was in my early 40s and life was actually really good. 2012 happened to be a record-breaking year for myself and my clients. We all experienced some pretty miraculous breakthroughs. And I took the month of January into the first week of February off to celebrate, the accomplishment and just to kind of rest and recharge my battery. And had an amazing experience with Louise Hay and Cheryl Richardson at a retreat that they were conducting at Miraval Resort, which had been on my bucket list for 5 years, wanting to go there. And it was a dream come true to be able to be at such a beautiful resort and with two people that have been mentors of mine for, a number of years. I also got to spend 3 months in the Playa del Carmen area of Mexico, just recharging in the sun and the beautiful energy there. And in March of 2013, I had signed a publishing deal to write my very first business book. That was going to be my first book. And honestly, life was really good. I was really at a point in my life where life was where I wanted it to be. So I thought. And I had born and raised in the Boston area. I went to undergrad and grad school in Boston. Worked in Boston for years in the corporate world, so I knew Boston like the back of my hand. And I love sports, but I had never been to the marathon. I personally do not like long distance running, so I just never had the desire to go. And this particular year was different because a very close friend of mine, her son was running Boston for the first time. He was graduating med school that year, and she does not know her way around the city well, and so she asked if I'd accompany her. And we decided to make a day of it. We decided we would venture out a mile from the start line. There was about 20 of us that went there early in the morning to see the runners come running by, and it was actually a quite inspiring experience and something that, quite frankly, shocked me. And it shocked me because not being a lover of long distance running, my idea of running is behind a white ball, a soccer ball, a softball, or a volleyball. And so, but seeing the first wave of runners go by, which is a wave of disabled folks, and to see blind people in this crowd, to see men and women, with a prosthetic leg, or in some cases, 2 prosthetic legs running. And there was also a small group of military service men and women who were in their fatigues, work boots, and 50-pound packs, doing the marathon. I thought to myself, oh my gosh, Like I had no idea.
That is incredible. I had no idea they did that either.
Yeah, and it was such a moving experience that it actually brought me to tears. And I was like, wow, if these people can do it, like how inspiring is that? And then after that happened, you got to see the wheelchair division come by, and boy, they came racing by. And then the elites came by, and in a blink of an eye they were gone. And then literally a sea of, imagine approximately 7,000 people in each wave, and there are several waves of runners, right? So each wave has about 7,000. Imagine them coming down the street that you're standing on the sidelines of, and it's like electrifying. It's just like this whoosh of energy come racing by. Everyone is so happy and excited. It was a pretty miraculous morning.
I'm getting goosebumps just listening about this. I didn't know that that's how it started every year. That is truly inspirational to watch that. I'd love to experience that one day. So, what happened next?
So after we saw all the runners go by, it was probably like around 11:30 in the morning. We had been there all morning long. And the plan was for a group of us to venture into Boston to the finish line to see, my friend's son Dan cross the finish line. And as luck would have it, members of my family were planning on going, and they changed their mind at the last minute. And that ended up being a blessing in disguise because my mom was supposed to come in, my sister, my brother-in-law, and my two nieces who were 5 and 7 at the time. And they just opted not to go. And so it only was my friend Muriel and I who ventured into Boston. We got there early, so we grabbed a bite to eat, and then we made our way on foot over to the finish line. And as we were walking to the finish line, I've been, being a big sports fan, I've been to a lot of professional sporting games, and it's just customary that you go through a security process. And as we were getting closer to the finish line, I realized there was no formal security process. Now, I did see police officers, scattered about, but there was no process of checking people as they entered into. And think of it. Think of, the streets of Montreal, and you've got the main thoroughfare that normally cars would drive on blocked off for the runners. And so now you're on a sidewalk, like with tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. You're like packed in like sardines. And I thought to myself, wow, there's no security process. But I let it go. And I was like, well, they do this every year, and they've been doing it for, many years and with no incident. And we had an app on our phone to track him to see where he was. And at this point, he was about a mile out. And I remember saying to my friend, and she's only 5 feet tall, I'm 5'4", right? So imagine a sea of people packed in like sardines, and everybody wants to see the finish line, right? So you want to be as close to the barricade as possible to see your loved ones come running by. And when we got to the finish line, we were literally probably 15 people deep behind the barricade. So we couldn't see anything but the backs of people's heads, or, their backs of their bodies.
Yes.
And I said to myself, okay, we didn't come all this way to not see him. And then next thing I know, there was a small group of people, probably like 15 feet away from where we were standing, that left, and they were right at the barricade spot. So I grabbed my friend and we went, and literally we were in a prime location.
Mm.
And at this point, I checked my phone, and he was about a half mile out. And I vividly remember everybody happy-go-lucky, singing, cheering, announcers announcing people. I witnessed a woman who was literally about to collapse. And she, at this point, was probably 25, 30 feet from the finish line.
Yeah.
And what was so miraculous to witness were complete strangers. Two gentlemen came running. Like, they were runners. They were participating.
Mm-hmm.
And they came and literally picked her up and dragged her across the finish line.
Beautiful.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
And then Moments later, the first of two explosions went off.
What did you feel at that moment? It must be like surreal, right? You don't, did anything happen to you at that moment? Did you go unconscious? Did something happen, or were you conscious of what was going on?
I was conscious. I did not lose consciousness during it. What happened was I remember seeing that experience of the runners. And then I also remember seeing a woman who was wheeling her disabled daughter running the marathon. And then the next memory I have is actually about to pick myself off the ground. And I didn't know how I got there. I heard a loud explosion just a moment before I found myself on the ground laying there. And as I was about to pick myself up, I turned to my left and I witnessed things that no human being should ever have to experience. I saw I saw blood everywhere and it was just absolutely horrific. And it actually did not seem real. It seemed like I was in a time warp and like instantly, in a horror movie, frankly. It's hard to comprehend. And literally, it happened in a nanosecond. There was no warning of it, it just occurred. And what was so stunning is imagine literally people packed in, cheering, happy go lucky. The announcer's announcing, and there's music playing in the background. It's like, off the charts electrifying. And then I remember a moment of brief silence. And I could hear the glass from the building behind me hitting the ground. And then my next memory is the crowd that was once happy was screaming at the top of their lungs for help. And it was sheer pandemonium. It was sheer terror and absolute horrificness.
I listen to you and my heart is just broken. I can't even imagine what that type of sudden terror, it's something to expect something. And there's, that's another thing. But just to suddenly be from such joy and laughter and inspiration to like a 360, a 180, where you're fighting maybe for your life. People are dying around you. People are hurt. People are screaming. Everybody's in complete terror.
I was not aware at that time that I was injured. For me, something kicked into gear as, okay, at first, the truth is at first I thought, okay, this must have been a gas explosion, right? There was a loud bang or a loud noise. Like when I heard the glass hitting the ground behind me, I just assumed it was a gas explosion. I did not go to this must be a terrorist attack first. And then when I saw what I saw, I just assumed it was from the explosion. And for me, this time period seemed like minutes, but in fact, it was seconds. So 12 seconds later, the second explosion went off. In my mind, things were going in such slow motion that I literally would have said it was minutes later. But it wasn't. It was 12 seconds later.
What happened to you physically?
Physically, I later learned I had spinal injuries that impeded my ability to walk normal for 6 months. I was wearing a camera with a full lens and it was hanging around my neck. So it was basically in my abdomen area. And when the blast of the explosion happened, it sent me into the barricade and that camera and the lens protruded into my abdomen. So I had all kinds of internal inflammation and bruising and injuries of most of my major organs. I later learned that I had a brain injury. So from the concussive blast of the explosion, it hampered my ability to recall things that I knew. For example, I've played golf for, most of my adult life. And, I later learned that I couldn't recall how to play golf and that I couldn't recall things that I knew before. And so it was a 4-year journey of coming full circle and healing my body, healing myself emotionally, physically, mentally, and spiritually. And what happened to me was I knew, having had met folks from, the 9/11 attack, from the Oklahoma City attack that happened back in the 90s, I knew that terrorism is not something you easily overcome. In fact, most people never fully overcome it. It lingers. I had PTSD, severe form of PTSD. Most people do.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw what happened to myself and to so many others as a prison sentence. And I thought to myself, if my life is spared, I've got to find a way to get out of this prison sentence, basically. And so I was on a mission for the next 4 years, doing everything I could to learn how to heal myself naturally, which was a blessing and a miracle and something I had never knew how to do before. But I got introduced to so many different amazing people, practitioners, doctors, who helped me and taught me how to heal naturally. And even though so much healing had taken place in the 4 years, I knew there was something else I needed to do. And I prayed about it, and I did not like the answer I got. And the answer was, in order to come full circle in this journey, I needed to run the marathon.
Oh, wow.
And I thought to myself, I'll do anything but run the marathon. I have no desire to run the marathon. But that was the answer I kept getting. And so I ended up training, which was grueling. I was fortunate to have met and worked with a marathon runner from the 70s, Jack Foltz, and he created a very special plan for me because my body was still not in the physical strength to do a marathon. So even though I had come, full circle on my journey, I was not in athletic shape at that time. But yet I persevered on, and one of my high school friends embarked on this journey with me and trained with me and literally walked, ran, cried every step of the way of the marathon until we crossed that finish line together in 2017. And I'll tell you that was a complete coming full circle moment.
No kidding.
It was literally, I was able to close that chapter of my life and start brand new.
What were the emotions when you finished? I'm just picturing you. When you were ending the marathon, when you were coming to the end, what was it that you were feeling? Was it euphoria? Was it sadness? Was it all, everything combined together?
Well, let me share a couple of things with you before I answer that question, because it's pretty profound. So I said to you, I was praying about, what to do. That was in October of 2016. The Boston Marathon is always in April. It's on Patriots Day in the United States. It's in April of each year.
Okay.
So when I kept praying and I kept getting that I needed to run the marathon, at that time I was working out with a personal trainer who was helping me rebuild my strength. And at that time I could barely lift a 5-pound dumbbell. So just imagine, like, I just was not marathon quality shape.
Right.
Now, I was getting that I needed to run the marathon in 2017. My practitioners, doctors, and my trainer at the time said, you can absolutely do a marathon, but in 18 months. So in other words, in 2018. And I kept getting that, no, I needed to do it in 2017. I'm like, that's impossible. That's impossible. And as somebody who, I'm a triathlete, so I like short runs, but I particularly love biking and swimming. And I, like team-oriented sports. So I knew, being an athletic person, what it takes to get myself into shape, let alone marathon shape. And so, like I said, none of the programs that were out there for training for a marathon fit me at all. None. Because they were all for more, people that were further along in their physical abilities from where I was at that point in time.
Right.
And so, thankfully, Jack Foltz was willing to take me on, and he literally worked with me every single week and would adapt a plan to get myself to a place of where I could finish. Now, let's be clear. All I wanted to do was finish. I wanted to start and finish that race. I was not looking, I knew it was going to take me all day to do, frankly. And one of the things that they say to you in marathon training, it's critical to get to, if you can do a 20-mile run in your journey, and typically you do that, a month before or even a little bit earlier than that, the actual race day, then you have a high probability of finish the 26.2-mile journey.
Yes.
1 week before the marathon, I had not gotten to 20 miles. Now, anybody knows who does a marathon, you start to taper down into the 3 weeks. So 3 weeks from the date of the race, you start to taper down to prevent injury, give your body some time to heal, and so that you can perform at your best on race day. And in the back of my mind, I knew I had to get a 20-miler in. And again, despite what everyone else around me said, was possible or what I should do, I trusted my instincts, I trusted God, and I trusted what the messages I was getting. And my friend Carolyn, my earth angel soul sister Carolyn, and I, a week before the race, went and logged 20 miles. It took over 10 miles to do, and I cried the last mile because I was in so much pain.
Mm.
And leading up to, I was doing a lot of meditation. I practice meditation on a daily basis, and I was doing a lot of visualization leading up to the race. I was struggling with was my body and my mind were not aligned on the 26.2 miles. My body was just was giving me signs it can't do it. So it was the weekly after I did the 20-miler, and I thought to myself, crap, that was so difficult to do. How am I going to get 6.2 miles? Additional miles on race day?
That's a lot.
I had to come at it differently. And I had this epiphany one day in a meditation. And it was, I got an inkling to go look at the course map. So I go look at the course map, and I got the inkling to figure out how many towns the race, was in. And what I realized is 8 towns. And I instantly thought, oh my God, this is brilliant. All I need to focus on race day is going through 8 towns. My mind could comprehend that. My body could comprehend that. So I no longer focused on the 26.2 miles in my visualization. And on race day, I didn't care about the mileage. All I cared about was the town. So we just counted down the towns. Fortunately, the first town you reach in and just after a mile. So I was like, yes, 1 down, 7 to go. The race itself was grueling for me. I would say the first 7 or 8 miles, I was in a pretty good state. I was, just excited to embark on the journey. And, I just really wanted to finish. By the time I reached the half marathon mark, my friend who was with me the day of the bombings was in that spot. And it was such a blessing in disguise and the boost I needed to go the distance. When I reached I was about 16. I was in so much pain. We had to take a break for about 5 minutes. And my friend Carolyn said, let's go. We got to get going. And she stood by me every step of the way. And as we were coming to the home stretch, so we were probably about mile 25.5 at that point, something shifted. I had been exhausted leading up to that. I was in quite a bit of pain. But once we crossed that point into getting into Boston, I knew I was going to finish.
Mm-hmm.
And I took each step. And as it got closer, it was as if this burst of energy came out of nowhere. And I had been walking for a while, and I now burst into a sprint. And I just took off. And we were coming into the home stretch. Our family and friends were lined on the course. And here's the miraculous part. The blessing in all of it was my family and my closest friends were standing in the exact spot I was in 4 years prior when the bombs went off. Now, I did not know that on the course, right? That was a surprise. When I got to that spot, 2 things happened. I was in tears. I had tears of joy running down my face. And I immediately catapulted up, like I took this leap into the air. There's a picture of it somewhere. I took this leap in the air and I did a fist pump. And I was like, I did this. And then we just, crossed that finish line. And the emotions were everything from tears of joy, tears of sadness, and some level too, because so many people were injured and some folks died that very day 4 years prior. And so it was a bittersweet moment, to be honest.
I'm listening to you and I have tears in my eyes and a huge smile on my face, so I get it. What an incredibly inspirational story, Jennifer. Congratulations on finishing and getting to the place where you needed to get in order to recover from such a huge tragedy. I can imagine the work you put into it mentally, physically. I can imagine the pain you went through, the suffering throughout those years. And I am so proud to know you and say that, she did it. She recovered from all the demons and she finally finished that journey that lasted for so many years. And it's an inspiration to others, anybody suffering from PTSD or any kind of huge trauma like that. What strategies would you give somebody that is going through something like that real quickly?
Yeah, I would say, first and foremost, surround yourself with people that you trust and who are your biggest cheerleaders and supporters and who will, just help you through the journey. I would also say trust your instincts over you are the expert of you. No one else is the expert of you. So even though there may be experts, doctors, practitioners, anybody in your life who are experts in their field, nobody is the expert of you. And so trust your instincts always. If something doesn't feel right, speak up and make sure that you find people that you are aligned with and who will help you on your journey of recovery. And at the end of the day, you've got to be the driver in the driver's seat and not abdicate responsibilities to your doctors and practitioners. You've got to be the one to drive. You've got to be the one to get up, as difficult as it is. And boy, there were many days that I didn't want to get out of bed and I silently wished I had died that day. But for some reason, my life was spared. For me, I was going to do whatever it took to rise above it. And so in the days that I felt down, I was fortunate I had people in my life that would cheer me on and say, come on, you got this. And they didn't quit on me when I wanted to quit on myself. And so surround yourself with people like that. Inspire, read things, listen to things that are inspiring. And most of all, don't give up on yourself.
Thank you. Great advice, Jennifer. I know my listeners will love to know even more about you and your strategies on how you made it through adversity to, where you are today. So let's take a quick peek and fast track through some questions. Are you ready? Real quick answers. Sure. Okay. What is the one thing you are most excited about today?
I'm most excited about that I am able to teach what I've learned through film, through books, and through retreats and courses. I have been blessed beyond belief. So at the beginning, you read my bio, and all those things are things that I have done post bombings.
Amazing. Amazing.
Yes.
Share with us your one personal habit that makes you successful and keeps you inspired.
One is having an attitude of gratitude. I practice gratitude every day.
So do I.
It took me a while to be grateful for the bombings, but I eventually got there. And so even being grateful for the quote unquote bad things that happen in our life, because I have now come to understand everything that happens in our lives is happening for us. It's happening to help us evolve and to grow and to be who we are truly meant to be.
Very true. Very, very true. What book would you recommend to our SB listeners and why?
If you want to learn more about my story, you can read about it in my book, Shattered. My book, Shattered, shares about my journey, but most importantly, it's actually intended to be a guidebook. So for anyone who's suffering from any form of trauma, by the way, the terrorist attack was not my first experience with trauma. I had childhood trauma. So this book really is designed to help you rise above whatever trauma you may be experiencing in your life. And it's really intended to help the reader find themselves and to rise above whatever circumstances they're dealing with and to create a life that they love.
Now, for a soul shaker question, if you woke up tomorrow and you were stripped bare of everything in your business and only had shelter, food, and your family, what would be the first things you would do in the next 30 days with only $500 in the bank?
I would start with just being grateful for having that, because that is actually something. And by the way, I actually had that. I literally was stripped bare of everything when the bombings happened, including financially. All my retirement savings, everything was gone. So I would say is live in the present moment. Be grateful for this moment and take action, even if it's the smallest step forward in the direction you want your life to go in. We actually create our realities. How do we do that? We do that by the thoughts we think and the actions that we take. So I am living testimony and proof that if I can rise up from all of that, losing everything at the height of being at the top of my game in life and being stripped bare of all of that, and to come back and have even like the amount of blessings that I've had since then are beyond what I can even comprehend. So thoughts become things. Choose your thoughts wisely, take action in pursuit of your dreams, and continue just to be grateful for this moment.
Would you say that's your one takeaway message today?
Yes.
Absolutely. What's the best way people can connect with you?
People can connect with me by going to my website, jenniferkauffman.com. You can learn more about myself and what I do there. You can also join I recently launched my YouTube channel where I'm doing interviews myself, so people can find me on YouTube. Again, Jennifer Kauffman. So that's how people can connect if they would like to.
Perfect. Thank you, Jennifer. And I have to tell my SB listeners, go out and get her book, Shattered. Thank you, Jennifer, for sharing with us your stripped bare story.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you for having me, and thank you to all your listeners.
That's all for this episode of Stripped Bare FM. Start living your best life. Head to CatherineContos.com for more information and resources, as well as ways to connect with Catherine directly. That's available exclusively on CatherineWithAC, KONTOS.com.